Thanks for joining me again this week. I was in Annapolis for Maryland Governor Wes Moore's State of the State address. Since taking office, the Moore-Miller administration have been good partners to Montgomery County. This is the governor's third address, and it is clear that he's the right person at the right time to lead our state during this very challenging time. His administration is facing an unprecedented state deficit, as well as uncertainty of federal funding support in the future. It was clear that despite the obstacles that are in front of us, the governor remains optimistic and has charted a path forward.
And our job is not simply just to batten down the hatches. We must prove that when Maryland was tested, that we collectively met this moment. And while there are many opinions about how we ended up in this crisis, let's work together to make sure there is never a question about who solved it. That when crises come, we confront them. That we confront them with courage, together.
The governor presented his $67.3 billion plan, which focuses on boosting the economy, strengthening our workforce, modernizing government, and creating a fair tax system. I was glad to hear he backs tax reform that does not raise revenue through sales or property taxes on residents. The governor announced that a record investment in education would include over $400 million for child care scholarships. And at a time when federal investments are a question, some of the planned state spending would help create clean energy options at a time when we desperately need to address climate change. At the heart of this budget plan is growing the middle class, creating jobs, and spurring economic activity. Here in Montgomery County, we're doing our part. Our county accounts for 1/6 of the state's population, but 25% of the state's GDP. We're going to continue to focus on growing our life sciences, technology, and hospitality industries, while we also look for opportunities to create more manufacturing jobs and investing in workforce training and our educational system. We look forward to the continued partnership and collaboration with the state economic development efforts. This week, I welcomed Lieutenant Governor and Montgomery County's own Aruna Miller to my weekly media briefing to discuss the governor's plan.
We're going to have to really think about expanding our economy, making sure our tax base gets broader, growing our economy. So our FY 2026 budget proposes $2 billion in smart, targeted spending reductions because we want to make sure government is efficient. And we want to make sure taxpayers' dollars are being spent in the most efficient way. And we're going to make $1 billion in new and redirected revenues. We're going to make sure we invest in all of this. So what does this mean? We're going to diversify our economy and invest in the industries of the future.
Last week, Maryland Governor Wes Moore visited the Wonders Early Learning Center at Leland and Chevy Chase. He was there to meet the parents and educators and discuss the state's investment in education. He noted that Maryland has jumped 20 states in fourth grade reading level proficiency, going from 40th to the 20th slot since the previous assessment. I want to thank the Moore-Miller administration for making child care a priority as we move forward despite a budget deficit. Here in Montgomery County, I've also made child care a top priority over the past 6 years by investing an additional $55 million over and above the base HHS budget. In 2021, the council unanimously passed and I signed into law this Early Childhood Education Initiative, which aligns efforts across Montgomery County Public Schools, Montgomery College, and the Montgomery County government, and created a more equitable early child care and education system for children from birth to age 5. This collaboration maximizes public resources and strengthens system-wide coordination to eliminate barriers and provide equitable experiences for all families. Its focus is on creating high-quality and affordable programs to help families. Our efforts helped establish a direct grant program for providers, created family involvement centers throughout the county, and grew the number of licensed family child care and scholarships for ECE education at Montgomery College. We are specifically focused on the following: aligning services for easier client and provider access, sustaining high-quality early childhood education programs throughout Montgomery County, improving access and affordability to high-quality programs, expanding the supply of child care facilities. We still have a lot to do. The county has 1,269 licensed child care programs offering just over 43,000 seats for children up to 5 years old. With 57,000 children in that age range, significant gaps remain, even when you consider that some families aren't going to choose child care, especially those who cannot afford it. As a former teacher, I know the value of early childhood education on a child's development. Quality licensed childcare with proper teacher-to-student ratios is essential for working parents to know that their kids are getting the kind of education they need. More importantly, it's critical for their children. Of all the investments that we can make, early childhood education is probably the most important and most effective program for making sure that children start kindergarten with the language skills and social emotional competences that create a level playing field. I appreciate having a governor who gets it. The governor understands that by investing in early childhood education, we're helping on multiple fronts. It is as much an educational priority as it is an economic one. I thank the governor and his staff for visiting Montgomery County and highlighting this critical issue for our families. To learn more about our child care resources, please visit Montgomery County Child Care Support Services at montgomerycountymd.gov/HHS. Earlier this week, a group of council members introduced a package of legislation and proposals that they titled More Housing Now. Since then, my staff and I have received numerous questions and requests for comments about this package, particularly about the zoning text amendment that would extend the county's workforce housing program to corridors throughout the county. We have yet to had time to carefully review either this proposal or the others, so my comments today are fairly general. First, let me say that I appreciate the council members are trying to address some concerns that came up repeatedly around the attainable housing strategies. As I've discussed previously, the Attainable Housing Strategies proposal from the Planning Board understandably generated enormous consternation across the county. That proposal had extensive problems, many of which I've addressed previously. Second, let me clarify that we all know that housing costs have gone up drastically. Renters are facing high rents. Many would-be buyers are not able to find homes that they can afford to purchase. So I think that any proposed solution must be clearly explained and help address the affordability issue. At this point, there is no evidence that these proposals would help with affordability or address the lack of affordable housing for many people in our community, either for renters or homeowners. Increasing funds available for down payment assistance could expand homeownership opportunities, but that's a budget decision and it's unrelated to zoning. We already provide limited down payment assistance. We already have a workforce housing program, and it's great for those who can get it, but it's costly to the government and it doesn't serve a lot of people. At least upon first review, the proposed zoning changes seem to be geared to producing mostly market rate housing, with only a small percentage of more affordable housing. But it was done without consultation with the executive branch and the housing, zoning, and transportation experts that we have. And it was done with zero community involvement. This is no way to introduce a major zoning change that touches many of our communities. As I mentioned before, one of the ZTAs is focused on workforce housing, which theoretically is aimed at teachers, firefighters, and police, and other middle-income earners. However, workforce housing is defined as serving people with incomes between $148,000 for 2 people and $185,000 for a family of 4. That definition doesn't square with income regions being targeted. The county adopted a workforce housing program almost 20 years ago. Before embarking on a new workforce housing proposal, we really need to understand whether the existing workforce housing program has produced the desired results. It's my understanding that the program has multiple unresolved issues. It's rarely used, and it's unclear who's benefiting. Our Department of Housing and Community Affairs has been analyzing what is working and what needs to be changed. And that goes to a larger point about these proposals. They're confusing. They were developed and presented as a surprise to the executive branch and to many communities who have expressed concern already about the attainable housing solutions. The timing of the surprise announcement, before there was any public resolution of the attainable housing proposal, has created confusion as to whether the new package is the first step toward implementing attainable housing, or is this something different? Residents had reasonable expectations they'd be consulted after the listening sessions. Now they're trying to understand what the impact of these newest proposals would be on housing affordability and how these proposals would interface with their communities. A number of them are equally concerned that something will be rushed through and they won't understand what has happened. So I clearly hope that any proposals will be carefully reviewed and explained with meaningful input from communities in all of the affected areas. In fact, this countywide approach to rezoning that is in the attainable housing strategies and now in these ETAs replaces the long-time approach of master plans that historically have engaged the affected communities. The combination of these two approaches has rendered master plans meaningless. The people who live here now, who work here, who are in our schools, who use our parks and our hospitals and our transportation system, who looked hard to find the house they wanted to live in, they need to be part of this process and the decision making. I would also note that some of the risks in the Attainable Housing Strategies proposal may also be present in this package. I will note just two for now. First, displacement of lower income households along major roads. Currently, many of the homes along the major roads are rented by lower income families, and one of these ETAs can incentivize owners to sell their property for development. And very likely the replacement units would be smaller and much more expensive than the existing housing. Second, what would be the impact of increased development on infrastructure? Primarily this is schools, transportation, and parking, but it also includes trees, stormwater management, and flooding, emergency services, public safety, and parks. Those are major issues for consideration that are central to maintaining our quality of life for diverse communities. So at this point, there are many more questions than answers, and our residents deserve to have all their questions answered. And we need to be very comfortable that these changes will actually bring us more affordable housing and that the county revenues that are proposed to be spent are the best use of those funds. We will continue to review these proposals, and I intend to be an active participant in these conversations moving forward. Please feel free to include me in correspondence. I can be contacted at mark.elrich@montgomerycountymd.gov. I, like many people around the world, are justifiably outraged by the elimination of the United States Agency for International Development. The decision to shutter this agency is dangerous for our national security, but it also reflects a departure from our nation being a beacon of humanitarian aid and support. Senator Chris Van Hollen called the move an illegal power grab. Congressman Jamie Raskin was also on the steps outside the closed headquarters Monday, and he noted that the elimination of USAID puts lives at risk. Congressman Glenn Ivey rightly points out that only Congress has the power to make decisions like this. For decades, the agency has distributed money to our allies to fund non-governmental organizations, and it helps people around the world. USAID employs many federal employees and contractors, including organizations and employees in Montgomery County. Many were told this week that they no longer have jobs. This is another setback for our county's workforce, which has been under duress during the first few weeks of this presidency. Our county's congressional delegation has vowed to fight against this decision. I thank them for their effort to protect USAID and the critical work that they do. Congressman Raskin said it best in response to this crisis. The election of President Trump did not create a fourth branch of government called Elon Musk. This year marks 50 years since the very first Black History Month. Every year it allows us to look back at the contributions of Black Americans here in Montgomery County and beyond. It is significant to me because I do not think this country can heal and put itself in the right course until it deals with its own history. We've avoided real discussions about Black history for years. The current administration wants to make it illegal to have those discussions if you're a federal employee. Anyone who has worked to address inequities in society and to help raise all people up are being targeted for removal from their federal jobs. When it was introduced on a small scale under the term critical race theory, that effort was vilified. All critical race theory is the telling of American history in the way that it actually occurred. It's too bad they used theory when they described it. That truth may be uncomfortable for some, but it's a reality. And the ending of the Civil War and the passage 100 years later of landmark civil rights legislation failed to create the necessary programs and changes to give full and equal rights to Black Americans, nor did it do anything to concretely address the consequences of 3 centuries of racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. For too long, we denied the aspirations of liberty and justice for all, and that phrase had no meaning for Black Americans. It is frightening to me that even today there's a drive to pretend that enacting racist policies never happened and that the impact of the Civil War does not matter. In Montgomery County, we used this month to highlight educational opportunities through our libraries, recreation centers, and even our agricultural office. The Underground Railroad ran through our community, allowing slaves from the South to travel north to freedom. This county was blanketed by plantations that used slaves. And when that ended, our predecessors found another way to block the benefits of freedom to the former enslaved people by placing racial covenants on much of the land that made it difficult for black families to buy a house or to rent in this county. Covenants that persisted until the 1960s. I hope you will visit the Gaithersburg Community Museum, Woodlawn Manor Cultural Park, or Black Rock Arts Center in Germantown this month to learn more about our history. The list of the events is available on visitmontgomery.com. We announced in December that the Executive Office Building in Rockville will be renamed to honor former County Executive Ike Leggett. This renaming ceremony will take place on Monday, February 24th at 3 p.m. with speeches honoring County Executive Leggett, followed by an official unveiling of the Executive Office Building's new name. We expect to have a packed house to honor this great man, and we are asking folks to RSVP to attend. Please email us at leggettevent@montgomerycountymd.gov to reserve your spot at this historic occasion. So that's a wrap for today. Hope you have a great week, and I'll be back again next week.